humans refuse to do certain things because we ultimately, I feel, want to live a life of creativity.
Yep.
More so than we do of power, of control.
Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor, and today I'm going to be talking about the film The Naked Island. I actually discussed this film with the video artist and director and screenwriter Wash Machine up in Brooklyn. We were talking about films and we watched a film together. We watched The Naked Island. It's a really interesting film. It is set on an uninhabited island in Japan. And the unique thing about it is that there is no speaking in the entire film. No lines of dialogue are spoken. There is some singing, there's some exclamations, but there is no dialogue. And that is a really interesting device that is used in this film. And it allows for the film to be extremely contemplative. The plot is that this family is living on an uninhabited island off the coast of Japan, and they must utilize a lot of traditional farming methods to survive. So the film follows their day-to-day life. The editing pacing of the film is probably the most interesting thing that I noticed about it. The pacing of the editing is very slow, but very deliberate. And that slow pacing is something I always appreciate in a film because it allows the viewer to really spend the necessary time that the viewer needs to with the film. And although this film is slow, that slow pacing allows for the climax of the film to really have an impact. If you don't go through the slow day-to-day moments of this film, the ending of the film wouldn't be as meaningful. So I think this is a great film for an editor to watch to really kind of understand not just how individual cuts need to be put together, but to understand that as an editor, what you really need to do is look at the big picture of the film, the structure of the film, and understand how the timing and the pacing needs to work in the overall big picture. So let's just jump right into my discussion with Wash Machine about The Naked Island.
When it first started, I thought, well, this is actually what life is like. Mm-hmm. We don't constantly blabber and say unnecessary things when you're with, your immediate family all the time, and it feels like, well, this is more true to life. And, films where you just have characters constantly just yapping at each other, saying all this exposition, saying things that we would never say.
Like, hi, brother, how are you?
Exactly. How was your work today at the factory?
Yeah.
Just bringing it all in like that. This film was freeing that and creating a more, even though it was so purposely lacking communication, verbal communication, it was communicating in so many different ways visually. Right. And it just reminds you how cinema is a visual medium and how much can be portrayed through the looks, the expressions, and how much the characters were at one with their environment.
Yeah.
I think was a real key thing. You have the compositions of clouds, mountains, the water, and they're there too. And when you think about how much communication, verbal communication, is at the core of the human experience,
right?
It's really language is what separates us from so many other animals. It's one of the main things. And to remove that, you start seeing the bare bones of humanity.
Right.
Of us going back to the environment, back to animal lifestyle. And you see this real depiction of survival. Mm-hmm. The film is so much about survival and what we need to do to survive. And when you're surviving in this place that is not friendly.
Yeah.
So I think Naked Island becomes all of Japan. I think, there's a way to see it that in Japan, that's how you might feel. You're remote and you're isolated from the rest of the world, and you have to go off and
bring resources
back. Exactly.
Right.
So the whole thing is a metaphor for how Japan must see itself in the whole global community.
Right.
So detached And especially at the time that they're making this film, you have to think 1960, it's so close to post-World War II, you know, Japan is going from that type of lifestyle that you see these people enduring to a very modern Japan.
And they give you little hints of it when they go into the town. So they go into the town and they see like the TV, the little tiny clip they have of the TV show of the woman, and it just becomes that was such a great little moment to add, because it, as a viewer, it just like it's like, whoa, what the fuck is this nonsense? It like really highlights the absurdity of that modernity, like how it's so disconnected from material reality of like survival and all this other stuff. It's just this weird thing, but it is our reality now. Like that's what we live every day, is all that. It's all this like weird images, and like the Super Bowl was on yesterday. And we were watching all these Super Bowl commercials, and that's like so normal to us, is all this dumb Super Bowl stuff. But you take that Super Bowl commercial and you put it into survival situation, and people are like, what the fuck is the point of this thing? Yeah. So that was just such a great moment. Talking about it in terms of survival and in terms of like Japan as a metaphor, and then you can expand it out to, or bring it in to be more personal. Because for me, when I like to watch a film, I like films that I can draw meaning to my own life too. You know, I like to take the film and think about, okay, what does this mean to me? And as somebody, as all of us, we're all trying to kind of figure out how to survive and how to create something for ourselves. And that process is a process that takes a lot of time. And it's something that this movie made me reflect on, of like the process of doing anything, whatever it is, if it's making a film, if it's making a piece of art, if it's getting a job, if it's whatever, it's a process that takes a ton of time. And I think that this movie really broke down like how much of yourself gets put into these processes every day. You know, you get caught up in it at the expense of everything else, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that world of just surviving and enduring, which is a testament to human civilization. I think that you can objectively say, though, that humans don't want to just survive.
Yeah.
We want more. Is it more, or is it we want something else? And that is what makes us human.
Right. Exactly.
You know, we don't want to just eat, but yet we need to eat. We don't want to just sleep, but we need to sleep. We don't want to work all day, but yet we need money, sustenance. But at the same time, humans refuse to do certain things because we ultimately, I feel, want to live a life of creativity.
Yep.
More so than we do of power, of control, or of, you know, we're not driven so much by greed as we are driven to want to belong and have a creative life. And this film, its depiction of this family, it seems that that's not even an option.
Yeah, not even a little bit.
They've have to, and you don't know exactly how they got to this situation, but they're there, and even you're seeing these wide open landscapes, and there is this Garden of Eden feel to it too, where they're kind of at one with the landscape, in control of, they understand the landscape, they know it, but yet it's a constant struggle. And in this openness, under the sky, and in this island all by themselves, there's this imprisonment, which is a wild dynamic, because the whole time they're in the open air, you know, but yet they're imprisoned. And so that contrast really forces you to think about these things. And I really enjoyed the film's ability to be hypnotic and seduce my brain to wander and think about these really deep ideas about evolution and the human condition. And when you take away something like verbal communication, language, you end up expressing it even more. I was really thinking about talking and how we talk and what is communication for us and how important that is. Humans refuse to live a life of just labor. We need to interact. We're social beings, You know,
Yeah.
if we can live like the family that's depicted in this film, then we wouldn't be who we are. Civilization wouldn't be what it is. It's
Right.
because we need that connection to each other, especially when something happens like illness,
Yeah.
like you see in the film. It's a devastating moment.
Right, and like you're saying about the dialogue and the use of dialogue, the moment where you really feels like kind of odd almost is when he goes to the doctor. He's like trying to find the doctor. He's like running, and then he gets to the doctor, and then it like cuts before he's allowed to say anything. We don't see what he says to the doctor. So in your brain, you're thinking like, okay, so at this moment he has to explain this whole situation to this person and talk, but we don't get to see that. We don't get to experience that. So we are forced to then like almost create all of this dialogue in our head of like how he's gonna be like, you gotta come over here and help me, and like how much of that communication, how important that piece of communication is to fixing his problem. Like without communication, like if he was unable to communicate, like nobody's coming to help him.
Right. Man isn't an island, you know, it's that old story. No man is an island to himself.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, and it says something about all of civilization, not just Japanese culture of the time, but trying to exist in these places where you're not supposed to. Trying to forge a life where no one else is.
Yeah.
Trying to retain a past type of way of living that many people have left behind.
Yeah.
And this film sometimes feels like it's celebrating that past way of life and being one with the environment.
Yeah, there's moments where they're on the cliff and like you're like, well, this is amazing, and like they're taking a bath in a drum and stuff, and you're like, this is what people kind of aspire to. They want this kind of simplicity and stuff. But then
you get the other side of that, where their isolation ends up doing them in. And, you know, during the film, you know, you're just watching and you're wondering, why are these people putting up with this way of life? But then you realize, well, they're doing it for their children. They're doing it for their future. And that is what we're all working for, you know? And so you can't fault or blame anyone or look down on anyone that's doing something that's just going to get their kids what they need. But then the devastating scene happens where the child is sick. They don't know what caused the illness. And they have to go to the island and bring the doctor back and go through all these issues, you know?
Yeah.
And I can really relate to that, you know, and those types of struggles were some of the stories that I heard from my family from in a Croatian island, growing up poor, and they had to take these boat rides when people were sick or when someone was pregnant. They had to go and take these boat rides to the mainland to deliver the baby. And oftentimes they didn't make it in time or something because of malnutrition.
Yeah.
There was a lot of those stories growing up with my grandmother, especially. So it's a very real thing that it's depicting. And I think, you know, it's with that scene when he gets to the doctor and it cuts the communication, I think it is showing you it's doing something on purpose. It's not that these people live this type of life where they're silent with each other.
Right.
The film is purposely taking out dialogue.
Right.
And it makes you wonder how it is you make judgments about people. Is it what they say or is it what they do? You know, I think part of so much of philosophy is telling us, well, it's your actions that really matter.
Yeah.
You know, but then it's the thought that counts. It's this kind of back and forth where we often sometimes say the right thing, but then we do another. Many of us, we know that climate change is coming and is here and it's devastating and it's a real threat, but what can we do about it?
Right.
You know, so there's that dichotomy there that I think is set up in this film where you're left to get to know these people just by their actions. And one part of what I liked about that is that it becomes clear what they represent, their symbolic status. And they become, within this extreme microcosm, you have a very universal story, a very mythic story that penetrates to this old brain inside that makes you think about things like fairy tales or some of the first stories you heard as a child, and just really simple mythic things where you see the character as a representation and not so much this person.
Yeah.
And how much action is not only the foundation of cinema, but just our perception of people and what they do. So when there's this pivotal moment where the wife is carrying the water, and we've seen her do this 2 or 3 times, and each time we're just clenching.
And the filming of it is excellent. Like the way they build the suspense of they show her feet kind of slipping. Yeah. They show her struggling.
I know. And then when she finally spills the water, he comes down, and you're wondering what he's going to do, and he slaps her.
Right.
And that is made me think about how much that violence is communication.
Yeah.
That was him saying something.
Yeah.
Through action instead of words, because
right.
That's what the film is doing. It's taking out the words, but it spoke levels. And I think it's a real turning point in the film of how the pastoral relaxation, the at one with nature, starts to dissipate and go away right after that moment. Mm-hmm. From that point on, my thoughts are kind of going into this world of, well, why is she there and putting up with this abusive,
Yep.
And how did they get here? I'm thinking about more of the social political context of why they're here, and how the patriarchy and its oppression, even on this remote island, still rears its ugly head.
Yeah, yeah.
There's still this domestic violence, so they don't have it all figured out, even though they live this almost Garden of Eden life. They don't have it all figured out, and he is not someone that is going to be maybe the hero of the film,
Sure.
and then you get this distance with it, and I think that removing the words makes you think about language even more so.
And it comes back again at the end when she has a little bit of a tantrum, a justified tantrum, let's say that.
A rebellion.
A rebellion, good. Yeah, she has a rebellion about this process, and rips up all the stuff and throws the water on the ground, and then it goes to him again, and his reaction is to do nothing. And that's a really strong moment. The way that he looks at her, just all the just in his facial expression, we see the communication of that he's feeling the same pain, and he's understanding what she's doing. He doesn't go up to her and slap her and resort to violence again. So, yeah, and that's only possible because they took out the dialogue.
Absolutely, and I think it's back to your original point. The build up and the rhythm of the film is so specific, and the lack of happening in the film, the lack of change, or this happens, it allows the moment when finally there is a conflict, the son is sick, there's the death, and then there's her rebellion. It crystallizes those moments for us, because it isn't, in most films, we're so used to just conflict resolution. Yeah. From one scene to the next scene, there's a problem, there's a resolution. And it does that. I mean, it is a narrative film, but it does have these moments of hybrid documentary narrative. Yeah. And I really love that about it. It had some camera shots that felt very off the cuff, just capturing them doing the actual things.
Yeah.
And so often you're seeing actors half do chores or actions. They're not really digging, they're not really watering, or there's a stunt double or something like that. But this film, no, it's clearly making the actors go through this very work that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
They're actually doing it, and the camera's picking it up like it's a documentary. And then on the flip side of that, there's some very staged, beautiful shots where there's narrative, there's character development. They catch the fish. The little children catch the fish, and you wonder at first, well, what are they doing with this fish? Why aren't they eating it? No, they're not going to eat it. You find out they're going to try to sell it. And as they go from town to town, or from place to place rather, trying to sell the fish. As they go from place to place trying to sell the fish, they get rejected.
Yeah.
They keep getting turned down, and I think that is part of the world telling them that they're in the past.
Yeah.
And I think
and
that
that this thing that they think is so valuable, everybody's like, nah, that's nothing, man. Like, we got a bunch of fish here.
I
We
know.
don't need your fish.
Yeah, it's just, and also just this sense of what everyone at that time wanted to do is forget the past because of the traumas of,
Right.
of World War II and Hiroshima and all that stuff. It's you want to bury that and say we're not connected to that anymore, and we have to just continue. We have to keep enduring, and this is what the father is doing at the end. He's enduring, but at the same time, it's such a brutal, devastating, unfriendly, unforgiving lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it's a real dichotomy of celebrating this way of life as something that is pure and in some ways can never go away, but also throwing a knife at it and rebelling against it and saying how this family is doomed, and that whether you like it or not, modernity happens and you have to embrace it. And there's other forces that are bigger than you. You can go and live on an island and figure out your own sustenance and figure out how to live
Yeah.
off the land, but that's still not enough for the
Yeah.
human condition.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you're going to feel trapped into this situation then, and you're not going to be able to escape the reality of everything that's going on around you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I love a film that is so much about what it's doing and equally what it's not doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this film was courageously not doing and delivering on so many of the things that we come to expect when we watch a film.
Yeah, yeah.
And you would think that it would make you think about living in silence, but of course it doesn't. In fact, like you said, when he gets to that part where he has to talk to the doctor, you're thinking about how important communication is.
Yeah.
And that this lack of turning to her when she has a rebellion and saying something, just the simple thing of, it's going to be okay, we'll make it through.
Right.
There's
right.
not even that.
Yeah.
And so it makes it very cold.
And or even there's not even a moment where she gets to express her frustration and be like, I hate doing this.
Right.
I hate living here, or I miss my kid, or any of that. She doesn't get to say how she feels. That I think is really important, because it's like, it's kind of the whole point is like, none of that matters. Like, it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter how frustrated or angry you are. You got to water the plants.
Right.
So
you got to endure. We have to survive. But then I think that depending on how you read the film and who you are and where you are in life,
sure.
I think afterwards you're either saying, well, they're just going to continue because she continues, he continues, and we're left off right where the film started, except there is a death now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's another way to read it depending on where you are in life, where you're going to say, well, they're going to have to go and change.
Yeah, they're going to have
They're going to have to get
different.
off the island. And that rebellion was actually just the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of what will eventually get them off that island.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's really left, a lot is left for you to think about, which what any good film does. And if you think about the first scene and the similarities of the last scene, the death of the child is extremely pivotal.
Right.
And that makes it this journey that otherwise, if it wasn't there, I think, it would be less of a film. And it really achieves its drama, in such a different way, because this one incident is so crystallized because of the lack of anything else much going on, and the rhythm that it builds to this, death of the child is what gets you to think about it in in a way where if the film ended and then you saw them like leaving and packing up and going off the island, then it would be a different film.
Yeah. If they abandoned the island,
Right.
if you saw them abandon the island, then it would definitely change kind of what was going on. I don't know if I would like that.
Right. It's such a fragile film. Like any step in the wrong direction, I think the whole, like a house of cards, the whole thing falls apart. And it's very beautiful and very special because of that. The pedestrian aspect of it, when you're walking around the market, you're really feeling like you're seeing elements of Japan that you would never see otherwise, you know, and it's real. It's not a studio. It's not something that's been propped up.
Yeah.
It's very special.
Yeah. No, what you're saying about like it could go, as I was watching the movie and I was kind of getting into the rhythm of it and the feeling of it and the slow pacing of it, I was just thinking like, man, the ending of this, they could really screw this movie up, like, because this is building so much, and the slowness of it, it's you are giving so much of your attention to it that if it does something that feels false, it would just be horrible. Like I would have been so upset if it did something that like, even like the things that they do, like the death of the child, her ripping up the plants, like they need to be done. They were done in like. They weren't overdone, and if they were overdone, it would have ruined everything, I felt like. So, yeah, very careful filmmaking.
It made a choice to not have the dialogue, and it wasn't going to throw you a scene of dialogue at the end. It made a choice that this film is purposely taking away, and it's not that these people don't talk, it's that it's trying to show you how much we communicate without language. But then at the end, I really felt like, thank God we have language. You know, I think that we can't go on and live like this. But then it also made me think about how much unnecessary yada, yada, yada we do in life.
Well, and how much unnecessary yada, yada, yada we present to other people through media. Like, yeah, you watch a film and you think about how important language is, and then you think about how unimportant a lot of the language that we constantly hear and talk about and view is. So it's like we have all this important language, and language is so important, but then we kind of use it too much. You know, we kind of just throw it away.
It all becomes profanity. You know, and it all becomes for nothing, and a lot of talking, and you've said nothing.
Imagine the same movie where like she spills the water and the guy's like, you fucking bitch, you fucking like a raging bull.
The first words and only words.
Yeah, that would just be horrific.
Yeah. And that does kind of happen with the slap. You know, I mean, that's his way of communicating, and that's almost like one of the climax of the films, you know, because it's a real turning point. You know, and it makes you think about how, well, like for instance, if aliens were watching this film, like the film Explorers, the 80s film Explorers, there's these imaginative aliens that are depicted, and they learn about human life through watching our television shows and films.
Oh, cool.
You know, but I feel like this is a movie that the aliens should watch.
Oh, yeah.
Because so much of what we're watching on television is just too much talking. It's people talking not like anything that we talk like in the everyday life.
Yeah.
So this is a really good hybrid where it's showing you crystallizing human emotion and expression, and it is very expressive, but it's also giving it to you in this documentary form that's very intriguing. It also makes me think about another thing that I want to say is one of the, you know, if you think about East and West, and I was thinking about that a lot during certain points of the film because of the music felt very Western. It wasn't your traditional Japanese music or Eastern music. It felt very like orchestra and like a, you know, something you'd see in a Western film. And I thought that was the one point you see the school bag, the backpack
Has
of
the baseball
kid.
player
It
on
has
it.
the baseball player on it. Yeah, and their little hats. And I'm just thinking about how much Western culture and, you know, Japan going from a very isolated culture to opening its doors and opening its up. It's such a big part of its history, and how, you know, Western culture, it signifies the future. And I think that, you know, there's a way to read the film where, you know, you are kind of caught between this East and West, and it's not like one is better than the other. So one of the things that you could think about is how, you know, there's this saying of you should be so content with where you are, you don't need to travel.
Right.
You know, it's almost like a Taoist saying or some lesson, you know, of Eastern philosophy. And I think a lot of that was told at the time when China and Japan were very much in farming. You know, most people in the country were farmers.
Yeah.
And I think they didn't have the ability to travel outside of their village. And so to get people to be content with that and not have this adventure spirit in them fester, they were told, well, you know, the enlightenment is to be so at peace with where you are, you don't need to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I think that is like a drawback, you know. I think you can't go back in time and experience this past. You know, you have to, like, the Western spirit has some like positivity to it, in the sense that there's something very much like Walt Whitman's spirit of travel and adventure and go to the unknown and leave the place where you're born and experience something new.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, you know, that's the, I don't know how to say it, but not the drawback, but the criticism of an Eastern philosophy. Like, there's many criticisms you can do to Western thought, but a criticism is that it really forces you to just not have that adventure spirit, not have that spirit of change.
Right.
Instead, it's a spirit of
overemphasis on being content.
Right, and not leaving or challenging where you are and just sticking to this, like what they do at the end of the film, that they're just going to endure, they're just going to survive. But I keep going back to that thought of, that's not what humans, that's not what makes us human.
And the movie's talking about that with, like, the fireworks and with the little things, like they come in at really interesting moments because they're highlighted as being superfluous. In the movie, I feel like the fireworks at this very emotional moment, you see these fireworks in the distance, but they're also highlighted as being something, like, to strive for too. Like, it's not like they're useless. Like the idea of having fireworks, or the idea of having a TV, or the idea of buying new clothes, it's not useless. Although it is not useful to them and what they need at the moment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, you're totally getting at it. It's very easy to see the television fireworks as superfluous, decadent, consumerist culture. But yet these things do resonate and have a purpose, serve a purpose, and communicate something. You know, and I think that is it. The film having this void of language makes you think about language. It makes you think about how much you want to communicate with people correctly.
Right. Yeah.
It makes you think about how important it is, the words that we choose, and how much the words that we use become who we are. You know, it's a flip on the Forrest Gump type of Western philosophy, like stupid is as stupid does. You know, but at the same time, you know, these people living the way they do, you wouldn't say they're stupid, even though they're, you know, this lifestyle that they're doing is for survival, you know, but then so much of where we're going is about as far as like humans and evolution, we are going towards this importance of language. You can't live without it. So I love that void that it creates, and in that void becomes something solid. In the lack of verbal communication, you find your real need for it.
So thanks for watching Mint Volcano YouTube channel. Let me know if there are any other films that you want me to review in the comments below. Really appreciate you viewers. Remember to like, share, subscribe, do the things that you know how to do on YouTube that all the YouTubers tell you to do. I don't know if it's dated to ask people to like, share, and subscribe. I think people tell me that it is, but I'm an old man, so do it. Please, we love you. Bye.